Hey everyone, it's SoBlezz. Welcome to my channel. It's story time for beginner gardeners, so let's go for a walk and talk. I hope that you can get a lesson out of each one of these stories. Let's go. The early morning sun had just begun to rise over the small town, casting a golden glow over Sheila's homestead on the edge of the woods. Sheila, still new to garden but full of enthusiasm, was standing in her garden patch, surrounded by a bag of seeds and a few simple tools. She took a deep breath, inhaling the fresh scent of the earth after a light rain the night before. Today is the day, Sheila said to herself, determination setting in. It was the start of her gardening journey, and she was ready to transform this patch of overgrown weeds into a lush, beautiful garden. As she began her work, Sheila planted her sunflowers carefully, her fingers digging into that soft soil. The rhythm of planting became almost meditative, each seed representing hope for what her garden would become. But just as she was about to move on to that next row, something caught her eye. It was a glint, almost as if something was reflecting the sun beneath the soil. Sheila stopped, puzzled, and she brushed the dirt away with her hands. Beneath the surface, she found something small and shiny, an unusual seed, glowing faintly in her palm. "What is this?" she whispered, turning the seed over in her hand. It wasn't like any other seed she'd seen in her garden books. It pulsed with a gentle warmth, as though it were alive with its own energy. After a moment of hesitation, Sheila decided to plant that seed in the center of her garden. She imagined it as sort of a centerpiece for whatever might grow. She covered it carefully with soil. She patted it down, and she gave it a good watering. She felt a strange sense of anticipation that something important had just happened. That night, as Sheila was falling asleep, she had the most vivid dream. She found herself standing in a garden much larger than hers, filled with plants and trees that she had never seen before. The air was rich with the scent of flowers, and the colors were so vibrant they seemed almost unreal. In the center of this magnificent garden stood a towering tree, its branches spiraling up towards the sky. Flowers bloomed on every branch, their petals whispering softly as the wind passed through them. Vines twisted around the trunk, moving as if they were alive. As Sheila approached the tree, she heard a voice, softly yet commanding, say, "Sheila, you have awakened the spirit of the garden." She jumped and she looked around. She couldn't see anyone. The voice seemed to come from the tree itself. "Who are you?" she asked. Her voice trembled slightly. "I am the guardian of this garden, and you have been chosen to care for it. But beware, gardening is not as simple as it seems. There will be challenges ahead, and not every plant is what it appears to be." Sheila woke up with her heart racing. It was just a dream, she told herself. But as she lay in that bed, staring up at that ceiling, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The next morning, Sheila rushed outside to check the garden, and she was shocked at what she saw had grown overnight. Not only did the seed sprout, but it seemed to have just grew vines everywhere, and they were reaching up to the sky. I mean, the vines would look like they were reaching by force. And she kneeled down and she started hovering her hands over the leaves. And she could feel like those leaves were warm, like the sun itself was within those leaves. Sheila started rubbing her eyes and she was contemplating, is this real? And as if in response to her question that she was just wondering in her mind, the vine started to tremble. She put her hand over and a small flower started to bloom at the very top. The petals started unfolding slowly in that morning light, and Sheila's heart swelled with a sense of wonder. But before she could process what was really happening, what was going on, she heard a voice again, that same voice that she heard in her dream. "Be careful, young gardener," it said in a tone gentle but serious. "You have awakened the spirit of the garden, and now you must protect it." So Sheila stood in her garden, and her thoughts was racing, of course. She had always believed that gardening was a simple hobby, something peaceful and calm. But now it felt like she had entered a world where the plants had a life of their own, and she was the center of it all. For the next few days, Sheila worked tirelessly in her garden, caring for the magical vines and the rest of the plants. She watered them, she fed them, and she made sure they had enough sunlight. But as those days passed on, Sheila realized that those vines were not the only things that were growing. The rest of her garden seemed to thrive as well, as if the energy from the vines were spreading to the other plants. Her sunflowers grew tall and strong. Those bright yellow petals were reaching towards the sky. The herbs that she planted smelled stronger and fresher than before, and even the vegetables seemed to grow faster than she had anticipated. One evening, as Sheila stood at the edge of her garden, watching the sunset, she couldn't help but smile. She had created something beautiful, something alive, but she knew that her journey was just beginning. The garden had its own spirit, its own life, and it was her responsibility to protect and nurture it. As the breeze gently rustled the leaves of the vine, Sheila felt a sense of peace wash over her. The voice of the garden echoed softly in her mind. "You done well, Sheila. But remember, this is just the beginning. There will be more challenges ahead, but you're ready." With a deep breath, Sheila nodded. She was no longer just a beginner. She was a gardener, and her adventure was far from over. That's the end, guys. Thank you for watching. If you like these type of story times, please turn on your notification bells so that you can be notified when the next story uploads for this Adventures of the New Garden series. This is story 1, and story 2 will be posted shortly. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you in the next video.